Okay, you can hear me? Yeah. Okay, so human communication is very robust. Even in situations in very bad acoustical conditions, or even if a speaker who is language learner is constantly making massive lexical or grammatical errors, in many cases the listener can still reconstruct the intended meaning of the speaker, what the speaker actually wanted to express. So our question is, how do they do it? And if we actually can determine these mechanisms in human communication, can we implement them in artificial agents? In order to unveil these mechanisms for communication, for comprehension, for human comprehension, we'll first have a look at how it works in a more basic form of perception, which is vision. So in vision it is quite clear when a human is trying to perform an action like picking up something, that he is actually adjusting his movement based on feedback from his sensory motor system, from his vision system. This is quite clear. But also the opposite has been shown in recent literature. So when a human is perceiving someone else doing a movement, the same areas in the brain are activated as if that perceiver, as if that person was doing the action himself. So he's actually covertly simulating or emulating the perceived action. So there is feedback through perception for forming an action, and feedback through emulated action that steers perception actually. If you're more interested in that, there's a good paper summarizing this research by Günther Knobli. Okay, so even more recently, this has been applied to language comprehension as well. So it is again clear, there were already papers in the 60s that argue that humans, while speaking, are actually using their comprehension system for monitoring what they say. So this reveals unclarities or errors of language learning. You're speaking and suddenly you actually realize that you were making a mistake. But also the opposite would be true here. So while another person is speaking, you would actually be using your production system to covertly simulate the production process of the speaker. So there is feedback through comprehension for production and feedback through emulated production for comprehension. So I'm not showing videos about robots. I mean, Luc already did this in my supporting program. So actually, I tried to implement these mechanisms in artificial agents, and actually there are two reasons for doing this. First of all, if we have this hypothesis in human communication, it's very useful to use robotic platform or virtual agents modeling as a platform to actually see the consequences of these mechanisms. Do they actually work? Do they actually scale up, and so on? But on the other hand, it's also meant to make communication in robots itself more robust. So let us first have a look at how this is actually implemented normally, communication in robots. Luc showed a little bit of this, but we call this a semiotic cycle, and this is actually the whole cycle through which the agents go. So let's start at the world. The world is the physical world in which the agents or in which the population is located. So this is actually shared, of course, between all agents. And the agents, through their sensory motor system, each make up their world model. It's the physical world as perceived by the agents. So it's kind of different. It's from the perspective of each agent. It's different for each agent. Then from this world model, there is a conceptualization process. On the left, you see the speaker, by the way. So there is a conceptualization process in the speaker. So it's actually determining what needs to be said or what he wants to express. It's coming up with a meaning to formulate. Once he has this meaning, there is production process or formulation process to come up with an utterance to convey this meaning to the other agent. Then the hearer, for example, goes through a comprehension process to actually extract this meaning again from this utterance that was conveyed. Once he has reconstructed this meaning, he goes through interpretation process, linking this meaning to his world model. And his world model is, of course, just as for the speaker, linked through his sensory motor system to the real world. This looks very modular, but of course, in reality, there's a lot more interaction between the different models. It's very interwoven. And what I have been focusing now for this thing is the processes in the dashed box, which are production and comprehension. And we have developed systems actually for doing all these stages in the semiotic cycle. And the system that has been developed to do the thing in dashed box is fluid construction grammar. So what is fluid construction grammar? Actually, what does it do? It's actually quite simply put, it maps between an utterance and the meaning of this utterance. How this meaning looks like, it doesn't make any claims about this. This is completely up to the grammar designer, actually. So here, just as an example, I have something that looks like a predicate capus, actually. So it maps John would sing to there is a singing event, there is a John, the singer of the event is John, and the modality of the event is conditional. This is just an example of this. And this mapping is through constructions. Constructions which are actually couplings between form and meaning on a very basic level or on a more abstract level. For example, when construction, example construction, is this sing word construction. So on the right side, this we call the conditional part. This is what the agent should find. The left side is the contributing part. When the right side is found, this is merged into the structure. Here you see that it has two parts as well. We call it the production lock and the comprehension lock. So in comprehension, so for the listener, the listener will, in this construction, look for a string sing in the input he gets. If he finds a string, this construction will apply. It will merge this meaning into his linguistic structure and also merge this semantic and syntactical features, categorizations. In production, it's the other way around. So if he finds in his meaning that he has conceptualized this thing like sing event, or the singer of the event is a singer, then he will merge this form, namely the string sing in this example construction and these other features. This is on a very basic level, so kind of direct mapping between the string sing and a meaning sing event, singer event. But we also have constructions on a more abstract level, like an intransitive clause. This actually looks for a subject-noun phrase with some features, for a verb phrase with some features. In the input, the hash means like it's in the input, it has to be found. This, namely, the subject-noun should meet the verb, which means they should be sequentially after each other. And from these, you make up an intransitive clause. You see that this construction doesn't add any meaning predicates to the transient structure. It actually binds variables between meaning predicates. It binds meaning predicates to each other. So there are constructions on many different levels. Okay, this has been, I mean, this is not new. Fluid construction grammar has grown for 10 years. And this works quite well if an input sentence is covered by the grammar. By the way, fluid construction grammar, it's bidirectional, so you can formulate and comprehend utterances as you wish. So if it's covered by the grammar, it works quite well. But what happens if we get to a form like John sing? Well, fluid construction grammar doesn't care too much about whether this is grammatical or not. It just tries to analyze it as good as possible. So it will say, well, from the sing I can derive there is a singing event. From John I can derive that there is a John. From the argument structure in this, I could derive that the singer of the event is John. But then fluid construction grammar will detect that this is not like a complete meaning. There is information lacking actually, like temporal information and so on. And it cannot come up with this analysis because this is, of course, a form that is not in accordance with the constructions in the grammar. Because the grammar designer didn't come up with this, or in evolution this form has never been heard by the agent, so it cannot be analyzed. So what do we do then in our robust comprehension method? We break the variable links in the meanings and use the production system with the grammar of the listener to produce a meaning, an utterance based on this partial meaning. And while producing this utterance, these variables get actually bound by the grammar of the listener. So it will detect, oh, I don't have temporal information, so it will come up with this meaning. So there is a singing event, there is John, the singer of the event is John, and the time point of the event is before, for example, which corresponds to the sentence John sang. But, of course, it could also produce this, and it will also produce this. So sing event, John, singer event, John, time point of the event is now, which corresponds to the form John sings. So it doesn't know whether it's John sang or John sings, because it got John sing. Then we come up with all these production hypotheses, and according to some evaluation metrics, some ranking mechanisms, the agents will go for one of the hypotheses. And these ranking mechanisms can be based both on a form level or on a meaning level. So, for example, here, if the agent looks in his world model and sees that there is some John singing at that moment, it will probably say this is the most appropriate hypothesis. So these were just the example things. I made a case study for the Dutch verb phrase, which is a very complex structure. How am I doing in time, actually? I don't know. Okay. So which is a very complex structure. For example, it allows modal stacking. You can put as many modal auxiliaries as you wish after the one after another, which is in English not possible, for example. Like in Dutch we can say, ik moet kunnen zingen, I must can sing. In English this is not allowed. You have to use a paraphrase like, I have to be able to sing, probably. You can express the perfect aspect on modal auxiliaries, like ik heb kunnen zingen, or ik kan gezongen hebben. So you can actually very, very, very carefully set the scope of the perfect aspect in Dutch. There is also word order variation, especially when there are perfect forms. And there is quite a lot of linguistic debate about whether this actually has a very, very small influence on the meaning or actually no influence at all, and so on. I would rather think very, very small influence. Okay, I will just get out of presentation and show actually a demo of how this works. So I have to get to the screen. So, for example, the form heeft, zingt, literally has, sings in Dutch. We will parse it robustly, and as a ranking mechanism, the metric, we will use the Liebenstein distance just between the form, the erroneous input form, and the form that the speaker comes up with. Oh, I get the output here on my screen, so I will try to put it here as well. So actually it tries to parse heeft, zingt, meaning nil, so it detects that it cannot come up with a complete analysis. It takes a partial analysis, produces all solutions. In this case, it only gets one solution, heeft gezongen. And this was just to show actually the final structure, so you're parsing it again. So heeft gezongen, it comes up with an analysis and with a corresponding meaning network. This works, of course, also for more complex verb phrases, like zal, moet, kan gezongen, will, must, can, sung. This is, I mean, only the zal is correct here. I mean, all the rest is actually morphologically completely false. Just to show that it works. So parsing, oh sorry, this one. Parsing zal, moet, kan, gezongen cannot come up with a structure, uses the partial structure to could produce these two utterances, zal, moeten, kunnen, zingen, zal, kunnen, moeten, zingen, and the ranking, which is here the minimal number of word order errors, comes up with this solution, zal, moeten, kunnen, zingen, and the corresponding analysis and meaning network. So I'll go back to the presentation now, which is not here, which is here. Okay, I will skip this. This is actually the meaning representation I use in the grammar. Well, I can very quickly go through it. So it's very basic. So for lexical verbs, we have like there is a singing event, or there is a shouting event, or there is a playing event. For modal auxiliaries, we say the modality of an event. So take an event, apply some modality filter to it, and return the event with modal representation as another variable, where then other modality constructions can hook up on, or perfect constructions can hook up on. Perfect, same thing. So take an event, apply the perfect to it, and return the result as a new event, where then other things can hook up.